Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of We Got Issues. I'm going to try to contain myself. I'm a little shaking right now. I don't know if you guys can see. Um, but before I get started, I know you guys could already can see him. I'm gonna read a little bit of his accolades in here. You may know him from his work on the most successful indie comic book of all time, crossing over from comics to TVs to movies to merch to toys, and essentially making Gen X and millennials' childhood so memorable. The iconic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He's also created a black and white graphic novel inspired by spaghetti western and horror, along with Simone Beasley, called Fistful of Blood, published in Heavy Metal magazine. In 1989, he was honored the Inkpot Award along with his longtime collaborator, co-creator, and friend Peter Laird. And finally, on September 7th, he was immortalized at the TCL Chinese Theater along with the Turtles' handprints and signature. Guys, I cannot be more excited. It's such an honor to have Mr. Kevin Eastman here. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. That's it's always funny to hear that stuff because you you lived it. And you kind of forget about it. It's just like a wonderful series of experiences. But no, it's wonderful to be here with you and look forward to chatting.
Yeah, you're like, oh yeah, I did win that award. I remember, but I remember that I did win that
Yes.
award. That's right, because I've seen countless of your interviews, and I see the background that you have and in your office and everything. I'm like, yeah, he doesn't have the Inkbot award there, but yeah, no, I mean, like it's so great to have you here, sir. I'm just gonna fanboy out a little bit. I am wearing one of my more unique Ninja Turtle T-shirt that's on Japanese. Um, I know that you have probably been hearing this all day. Congratulations on the TCL Chinese Theater there. I would have thought that would have been done back in 1989, 1990 when the first movie would come out.
It was one of those. It was a really fun and amazing event. It was one of those happy accidents where you could never have imagined something like that. And even in your wildest dreams, it just never. It's like I always put it in perspective when I think like the back to
Mm,
the first issue. It was a complete story, beginning, middle, and end, because we never thought we'd get a chance to do a second issue. And
right,
that was coming up on 40 years ago next year. Um,
right.
so the fact that we've done and accomplished so many amazing, wonderful adventures and journeys, and thanks to such incredible fan
Mm.
support for everything we've done. This was just even as a year ago, somebody said, "Oh, they're going to put their hands in cement at the Chinese Theater." I was like, "Wait, what?" And um, so that was pretty cool. And it was
Right.
because I'm big movie fan, genre fan. First time I went to Hollywood, I went to the Chinese Theater. That's so cool.
Right.
See all the handprints and stuff. So,
What,
but what an honor! What a what a great event.
did you ever think that you're going to be in that situation? I know a lot of people always say like, I never really thought, or yeah, I thought about it and whatnot. But did you ever think that writing for Turtles will get you into that situation?
No, none of it. I'm coming up. Like I said, we're coming up on 40 years, and to Peter and I, it was really the dream. The original dream was, following the footsteps of, our mentors and our heroes. Jack Kirby,
Hmm.
in particular, was somebody that we were both Peter and I were huge fans of, and
Right.
both of us had those moments where we told our parents, hey, we're going to be cartoonists like Jack Kirby, and they give you that kind of look. We're like, oh, we're going to have one of those kids that'll never move out of the basement, kind of thing.
Right.
Um,
Ye- yeah.
and so yeah, so the dream when we did issue two, we sold enough copies where 15,000 copies, and we figured, well, if we did 6 issues a year, we could make enough money to pay our rent and draw comics full time. So that's
Right.
really where the dream came true for us. We were drawing full time comics.
Right.
Everything that came after that was just another level of like, holy heck, wow, what,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, as I know you're an avid collector too as well. I believe issue two was actually more popular than issue one because nobody, expected issue one to be that way, and then the second printing of issue one became more popular than the first printing of issue one, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was, in fact, the issue one was the press run was set by based on how much money we could borrow from my uncle, who gave us $1,200 to print the the first issue. We found a local printer in Dover, New Hampshire. Got a price quote for a number, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, that kind of thing.
Right.
Uh, and drew the get everything ready, and then we had my uncle come over for coffee, and we pitched him this business deal. We
Right.
said, hey, we loan us $1,200, we'll pay you back plus
Right.
interest. So that was where the first 3,000 was done. When that sold out as quickly as it did, which blew our minds because we thought we'd never get a chance to pay him back, so we paid him back and printed another 6,000. And then by the time we did the third printing, which was after issue two, actually after issue three, but it was then it was 45,000 for the third printing. So, but yeah, it just kept jumping exponentially to our great
It, it just keep
rise.
increasing. Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is that one of the most common denominator I would say from based on the interviews I've seen of you is that you're an avid Jack Kirby fan, which a lot of people are too as well. Growing up during that time, I've interviewed Jim Starlin and Jason Aaron and all that stuff, and they've always credited Jack Kirby on a lot of things. Now, my question is that taking the turtles independently and publishing it on your own, was that the original plan, or was Mirage Comics supposed to do like an imprint of another publisher? Because Jack Kirby has always preached of owning your own IP and doing your own independent stuff. Was that always been the plan, just to take turtles on your own, you and Mr. Laird, and go forth with it?
Well, that was what was great about the time that we were publishing Turtles, that the landscape had changed because Jack Kirby, big advocate for creator ownership and things, also grew up and grew out of Marvel and DC, which is a work for hire based system. So all the stuff he created for Marvel and DC Comics under the laws, the ways of doing business at that time, he signed work for hire contracts. So the company that paid you
Mhm.
owned them. So, often in many cases it was different because DC was better to him, but um, uh, the company would have full control, could do whatever they wanted to, make all the profits, and not have to share any of it with the creator. So a lot of creators in our industry were becoming aware of this, starting in the underground comic books of the late, 60s, early 70s. Not only because
Right.
they couldn't get work at Marvel or DC because of their stuff was too edgy or too,
Mhm.
whatever, but didn't want to give up their rights. Fast forward to the mid 70s, where 1976, I used to go to this comic store in Boston, and I found things like Cerebus the Aardvark, which was self-published and creator owned.
Right.
ElfQuest, Wendy and Richard Pini, Flaming Carrot. A lot of underground comic books were owned and creator owned, and this was the way the industry was moving. And Pete and I were like, well aware of creator rights and things, and what the opportunities. So that, with the arrival and the direct distribution, selling non-returnable to comic stores, allowed this opportunity to grow for self-publishing. And so
Mhm.
that's what we wanted to be. We already had enough. We'd sent our samples into Marvel and DC and got lots of rejection letters. Keep
Right.
trying, kids. You'll be good enough one day. But we
Right.
just didn't want to wait. We love that we got the chance to. The industry provided us a platform to self-publish and get our
Yeah.
characters out there.
Was one of the things I've kind of noticed too as well is that obviously the more popular documentary out there is the one with Netflix with the toys that made us.
It's terrible.
Uh,
It was awful.
you didn't like it?
No, it was terrible. It was like it was and actually, if fans want to see a really good and well done documentary, that's actually correct, is there's one called Turtle Power, which was done. And
2014.
what's that?
It
Yeah,
was done in 2014. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, no, and well, the funny thing is like, when by the time we were doing like here's how I'll sum up the toys that made us in one simple beat. One, Peter and I didn't hate each other. We were actually in the documentary filmed a couple years before. They made it sound like we hated each other. We did talk,
Yeah.
and we had been around each other. But the thing was, so question one, day one for the toys that made us, the guy said, he goes, "Hey, I see you're born in Springvale, Maine." And I said, "It's funny. It's a funny story, Mr. Interviewer. I don't know what Springvale, Maine is. I went to my Wikipedia page one day, and it said
Hmm.
Kevin Eastman, born in Springvale, Maine. And so I went and changed it and said no, it was Portland, Maine.
Right.
And I went up a couple days later, and somebody changed it back to Springvale, changed it back to Portland. Went up 3 days later, changed it again, and then I got blocked, so I couldn't change my own Wikipedia page to this actual place I was born in Maine. And so the guy said, "Oh, that's really funny." So
Hmm.
fast forward to the opening sequence to the toys that made us said Kevin Eastman from Springvale, Maine, and I'm like, so there you go. So there was just a lot of the stuff that was misrepresented for to make something sound more dramatic.
Hmm.
I felt that highly insulted some of the guys like John Handy and some of the guys that we worked with that were the guys that we worked with created all the original toys.
Right.
It was just very awkward and very
Yeah.
weird. They made a
Yeah.
story that wasn't a story, and so if you want to see a documentary that's actually factual and correct, Turtle Power is the one to see.
Yeah, I didn't think that that's while I was watching that documentary, I didn't really think that you guys hated each other. I mean, like that's years of friendship that you just can't say, "Oh, I we hate each other." Like that's not a thing, right? Um, it's just one of those things that is kind of just like, oh, I think that's kind of misrepresentative too as well. I don't think they also mentioned where you guys started selling the turtles too as well. The first time you guys sold the turtles, right? Was it in Maine that you guys first started on the convention in Maine, or was it in Baltimore?
No, it was a comic convention in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It was created in New Hampshire, but the first
Mhm,
appearance of the Turtles at a comic convention was May 5th, 1984,
mhm,
and a very small convention in the Portsmouth Traffic Circle in New Hampshire. So
mhm.
that's the kind of stuff that's like, it reminded me of two things. One is we did an interview with People Magazine back in the day, and we spent 3 days with the interviewer from People Magazine and one day with a photographer, and almost every single thing that was in the People Magazine article was wrong,
Yeah.
which was kind of funny because then it made me worried about everything else you read in People Magazine.
Mhm.
And I remember reading another story about me once. It said a fan here came up to me and said, "Hey, I hear you take the Concorde jet when that was still in existence. I hear you take the Concorde to Paris once a week for lunch." And I went like, "Wait, what?" I took the Concorde once just to say I've done it, but I and they said, "Yeah, everybody says that you used to take it every week to Paris for lunch." And I'm like,
They just blow it up all proportion. It's insane.
so it's just kind of funny what's said and what the reality is sometimes very dramatic, but it's all I have a thick
It's
skin
the
and it's
media.
not
That's
a problem.
how they sell the properties. That's how they sell papers and
Yeah,
clicks and all that stuff, right?
yeah. At least I'm not in the front page of the Inquirer or
Yeah.
whatever.
I always ask all the artists that I have on the show, I always ask them, is it how important is it to own your own IP? But with the success of the Ninja Turtles, I mean, that's pretty much self-explanatory. I would ask you, what would have been plan B if Turtles were never made? Because my last interview with Jim Starlin, he always said that you gotta have to have a plan B because there's horror stories with Jim Schuster and all the other artists that never had their own IP. And growing up loving Jack Kirby, I'm assuming that you guys had a plan B if if the Turtles didn't work out, right?
Well, the our plan A was drawing comics and getting into the business in some form. Having the opportunity and the platform to have almost a plan B where you can um, distribution and self-publishing and creator ownership through that distribution system gave us that plan B to create something and own our own IP. Otherwise, if that had never happened, our desire to work in the industry, the comic book industry, we would have done it in some capacity, whether it was writing, inking, penciling, something, because we love comics that much.
Hmm.
So the plan B was, you know, any way you can make money to support Plan A is the way. I had three jobs when we
Hmm.
put out the first issue of the Turtles. I worked at an art store, a restaurant, and a couple nights as a night shift at a hotel, a small town hotel in Dover, New Hampshire, where I could, draw all night, which was the greatest job ever. Sit at the front
Right.
desk, wait for some drunk to come in and, you know, check in. But so that was, so it's finding ways to support yourself while you're, you know, um, every actor you've heard of, or any musician, or any, even athletes in some cases, they have to do wait on tables or do this or do that, take the jobs that you have to do before everything you need to do to support the dream, which is your plan A. So
Yeah, no one really knows what happens in the background. A lot of people see the success right away. Even again with the Netflix documentary, it made it seem like you guys just kind of came upon the turtles, and all of a sudden everything's just all right again, right?
yeah.
Uh, yeah. So I mean, well, which leads me to the next question, though. I mean, how hard was it during that time in the '80s to break out of comics? Because you know, you hear a lot of stories that a lot of people have always getting rejected. One of the most famous ones, Todd McFarlane, he sent 500 sketches and he had 499 of them rejected and all that stuff. How hard was it for you and Mr. Laird to actually break through that door?
That was it. We never did, because we did the same thing. We sent resumes and samples and things, because once we met and we both wrote and drew and had strengths and weaknesses that we could work together to make ourselves stronger so we formed Mirage Studios to try to get work, but we sent from fanzine, asking for fanzine work, which you sent samples, and that's sometimes we pay $5 an illustration, to
Hmm.
role playing game opportunities, to every publisher at the time, Marvel, DC, Capital. There's a couple other fledgling Warren publication. So yeah, we sent all the samples and did all the stuff. It was the opportunity that the independent publishing allowed us to explore and exploit, is the one that was our breakthrough. In fact, it's
Right.
funny, the I think now coming up on 4 years. 4 years ago, I did my first Marvel cover. So it took
Oh,
me it took me it took me
really?
35 years to break into Marvel.
I didn't know that. Which cover was that?
I've done, like, and actually I'm working on another one right now, but I've done about 15 of them, and
Oh
it's
no, I
like,
mean like your first one.
oh, it
What
was
was
a
the title?
Daredevil. No, the first one was Wolverine. The second one was a Deadpool. The third one was X-Men. I've done, I think, 4 or 5 Wolverines, a couple Deadpools, a couple Daredevils. Yeah, so it's just funny that after all this time,
it
having
took
had
you it
success
took
with
you that it took you that long to get like a Marvel cover and all that stuff.
yeah.
And like yeah, I think he's famous enough. I think we can get him into Marvel. We can get him into Marvel. Yeah, I think he has a pull.
Yeah, even before, I was lucky, because even before the Marvel covers, I got to do some DC covers with the Turtles Batman crossover. So it was actually super fun to
Right.
draw. Not only get to do a DC Comics cover with one of my other favorite characters, which is Batman, but also put your co-creation. So the four Turtles and Batman on
Mhm.
the same cover was pretty epic. That was pretty
That
awesome.
yeah, I remember the Batman ones. Yeah, and then the Batman and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover. Are you doing another one for the second one?
Well, we did. There was three crossovers, three 6-issue series. They just came out with the omnibus, I think, about a month ago, 2 months ago, collecting
Hmm.
all three series into one beautiful omnibus. And I love that. One of my favorite writers, James Tinian, was the one that wrote all three, and one of my best friends, Freddie Williams, was the artist on the series. And what a great adventures! Like, prior to, we've done a Ghostbuster Turtles crossover, which was awesome. But Turtles Batman, that was right in our wheelhouse, and love that.
Yeah, Freddie Williams is actually pretty amazing. Yeah, I worked with Freddie before too as well. He said he has a. I was gonna interview him, but he said he has a secret project, and then he said I can't discuss it yet, so maybe next time. So now
Yeah,
you're making me think it's probably with you. So
you never know. I love any excuse, because Freddie and I did a wonderful 10-page Electra story together, which was really fantastic, cover and a
right.
story. But yeah, any chance I can work with Freddie is top of my list. He's a great guy. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, he's amazing. Let me ask you about Last Ronin, which is pretty relatable to all millennials and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fans, just like myself. This one was something. This was something else. This is as a Turtle fan and someone who reads comic books all the time. Reading the Last Ronin was something very special. Uh, when was the story of Last Ronin discussed between you and Laird? I know there's because within the comic book in the collecting world, we have our own perspective on when this was discussed,
Mhm.
and we always, we always turn what chatter are to reality. So from what we from my perspective, uh, we believe that this was discussed long before anything, basically around 1980 something, when you
Yeah.
guys were still doing Turtles. Was that the truth that you guys already wrote or discussed Last Ronin?
Yep. Yeah. It was actually it was 1987. It was around that we had just wrapped up issue 11 and issues 1 through 11. So we wrapped up a pretty, which include the four one shots on each turtle. So we had 15 issues that wrapped up kind of a big healthy story arc. And we were thinking like, well, where do we go from here? And we had this idea like, well, we have our beginning. Issue 1, we've got this foundation that we built from, the characters and Shredder and the Foot and April and Casey and so many supporting characters, Utroms and everything that we said, well, let's come up with a final turtle story and say, let's set it 30 years in the future, and then that'll kind of give us a lighthouse to navigate towards. So we did. It was a 25-page outline, um, basics and broad strokes of what the story would be, rough beginning, middle, and end. It didn't have a title at that time. And that was also the same year, 87 is when we started working on the toys, the cartoons, and everything. So that, got set aside. And then suddenly 5 years, 10 years, 15 years goes by, and we just have never been able to circle back to that one idea. And it was kind of shelved with a number of other ideas that we'd had um,
Hmm.
over the years for short stories and whatnot. So um, fast forward to IDW, the Turtles are sold. IDW picks up the comic license in 2010. And 2011, we start on the new series with them and Tom Waltz, and even starting then, we hoped in 2011. They said, "Oh, hopefully we'll get at least 1 year. If we get 12 issues, that would be great."
Yeah.
12 led to 24. So suddenly, we're coming up on issue 50, and it's like, holy, the comic franchise is just doing tremendously well, and we're having such a great time doing it. And so suddenly we find ourselves looking at issue 100, and that's about a year and a half down the road.
Hmm.
And Tom and I were thinking, like, well, we're wrapping up this very major story arc in issue 100. What do we want to do from here? And that's when I dusted off the concept, which became the Last Ronin. I said, well, Pete and I wrote this story in 2011. I
Hmm.
sorry, in 1987, and I said, let's um, pull it out, see if it's something we can adapt and then expand. And
Hmm.
so while he was finishing the major scripts up to issue 100, I spent about 7 months expanding the concept. And so when we were able to rejoin and focus, we said, look, I want to call it The Last Ronin, and it's going to be this. And let's expand it into 5 issues for 40 pages each, 200-page graphic novel. And we had a lot of other stipulations that I didn't think Nickelodeon would let us do. And so they gave us a thumbs up. And
Yeah.
so we adapted it, and that's what became The Last Ronin, was
That
based on that original idea from 1987.
that must have been kind of like a deja vu for you, because when you, I'm assuming that when you dusted off Last Run and you're like, well, let's see where this happens, and then all of a sudden it just blew up again. You're like, well, this looks familiar. It's kind of I've been like through this before.
Well, that was, it was one of those things that it was a very Dark Knight approach to us, in that it was sort of set in another universe, leaning heavily towards the Mirage universe, of course, but
Hmm.
not specifically in the IDW universe, as we like to call it, the IDW TMNT universe. And so, and we approached it in the same way. They said, we've got this, it's a really great idea. We've come up with this thing that sort of is set in the future, and it's this, this, and this. So if we can at least sell as many copies as the current ongoing Turtle series was selling, then at least it'll pay for itself, and we'll have a great time telling a great story, an emotional, epically big story.
Right.
And it just blew up a million times more than we ever even imagined. And that it really
Right.
was able to a lot of original fans
Right.
came back to the Turtles. A lot of fans that were already reading the comic series were digging it. And then it started bringing in other people that um, heard about it, wanted to see it. It's like, well, I've heard
Hmm.
about Last Run, and I want to find out for myself. I've never really read a Turtles comic, and so,
Right.
but man, yeah, just exploded. And what a, and what a treat. It's been so.
Yeah, it's been insane. It's an amazing book. Which leads me to like my next question too as well. I mean, eh, I'm not quite sure if this has been asked before. At least I haven't seen it or read about it. It's been asked before. Will we ever see at least the Mirage comics manifest itself at another point in time? Because with everything else that's going on right now, a lot of creators have more freedom. I'm pretty sure you could see that a lot of avenues to go about on self-publishing. They can
Yeah.
do Kickstarter, they can do self-funding. Will we ever see Mirage comics at some point in time?
I don't think so, and I mean that by I think you would see like I did. I was lucky enough to do a couple Kickstarters for a new project I have called Drawing Blood, which is set within the world of comics. And we did two. It's a 12 issue series, but we raised the money to do the first four and the second four, which we was running tremendously late on for a number of reasons. But we've had that. Pete, I think, is uh, pretty much fully retired. Although we've worked on a couple things together, mostly him inking some of the drawings and things that we've been doing. But Mirage as a company is that was just has gone away as an entity and as a business. So I think
Mhm.
that if there's any self publishing, it's going to be through um, what we're so very fortunate to have as an opportunity these days, which is instead of my uncle Quentin, we have Indiegogo and Kickstarter and a number of
Right,
other
right,
ways to fund a project.
right.
And that's very exciting for a lot of people. We try to support as many of those types of things as I can.
Right. I have one final question here from from one of your fans here. Was there ever an idea that if the turtles didn't work out, to try the story with another character, or kind of take the idea and use it for different characters?
Yeah, it's a good question. No, it's much like people said. Was there any other animal besides turtles? Was it sloths or llamas or alpacas? I don't know. They said, well, did you have any other thing in mind? And it was like, no, it was just sort of again this happy accident where I did this doodle to make Pete laugh, and it was one night in 19
Hmm.
late 83 early 84, and just said if Bruce Lee was an animal, what would he be? The
Right.
funniest, what would be the dumbest animal? A fast moving martial artist, slow moving turtle was a natural joke. I laughed, and Pete laughed at the drawing, did a sketch, changed some things. We said, well, if one, why not a group? So we did a sketch in pencil of four. And when Pete inked it, he added the Teenage Mutant to the title. And we just looked at this as what an incredibly, awesomely stupid idea. And we love it. And we don't know how we could do it, but let's come up with a story that tells how these characters got to be the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and
Right.
make it our first comic. So that was the point. It was just, you know, just a perfect storm of ideas that couldn't have been or happened or done anything else. There was never a second guessing it from that
Right.
spark to evolution to completion.
Right. Just one final thing before we end everything, because I know my time is almost up in here. The Mutant Mayhem. I don't feel like that is a movie for like the young ones. I feel like that movie for me. That is like such a relatable movie for me. I mean, even there's a scene there with No Diggity, which is the song by Blackstreet, and the background music. I'm like, this is a movie for me. This is not for like, I'm like, just push aside all the little kids. I'm like, no, this is not for you. This is for me. I mean, like, it's a very relatable throughout generation, I would say, not just for millennials. It can be related to a lot of people. But that movie there, did you feel like that movie was going to be something special for someone like myself? It almost seems like it's a calling card or a love letter for millennials like myself. Is that true, or what was it like something else that you kind of envisioned? What what
No,
what Seth Rogen was going for?
no, I think you called it spot on. I think that one of the things that they embraced fully was not only the idea that you had, like early. say like Bugs Bunny cartoons, or things that had the jokes and the things like the Barber of Seville. You had the antics of Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd and all the things for the younger kids, but you had this whole inside joke that only adults got. So you had for kids of all ages. It was that kind of story. So what I loved about the first Turtle movie was very similar. Is that what Steve Barron and Todd Langdon and Jim Henson created for the first Turtle movie was something for all ages, where you had the edginess, the darkness, the heart and soul, the emotional beats of the original black and white comic series, married with the animated antics and the jokes and the humor of the cartoon series, right in the middle. So you had a foot in both worlds and something for all ages. And I believe that that was the intent of Jeff Rowe, the director, and Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, was to do something in that vein for kids of all ages. So there was stuff definitely specifically put in there just for us that we would only get, the
Yeah.
older audience, whether it be the sounds, the soundtrack, jokes, references, inferences, uh,
Yeah.
so that imagine like a 7-year-old child that's watching it now and loves it for what it is, but then
Right.
watches it again when he's 20 and goes, "Oh my god, I never got that joke before, and now I do." So, but yeah, it
Oh yeah,
was.
most definitely. Yeah, that's what I felt when I was watching that movie. So, but again, sir, thank you for taking the time and answering my questions here. Again, guys, if you guys would like to check out Mr. Kevin Eastman, he's on Instagram, he's on Facebook, he's everywhere.
Yeah,
Um, he's everywhere. Again, thank you again for being here, sir. I dearly appreciate it. And if you guys have any questions, always let me know. Until then, I will see you guys next time. Peace out.